They dazzled the silver screen. Their voices enchanted millions. But behind the glitz and glamour of Hollywood's golden age, many legendary actors and singers faced a tragic fate, dying in poverty, forgotten by the industry that once worshipped them. In today's video, we take a heartbreaking look at some of the most iconic stars who fell from fame and lived their final years in financial ruin. Hollywood in the 1930s to 1950s was a dreamland, creating superstars overnight. But behind the red carpets and flashing cameras was a brutal system that often left actors financially vulnerable. Many stars of this era had little control over their earnings, and when the spotlight faded, so did their wealth. Unlike modern-day celebrities, actors during the golden age of Hollywood were under exclusive contracts with studios, which often controlled every aspect of their careers. They couldn't negotiate their salaries freely, and their financial deals were often one-sided. Many stars made millions for their studios but saw only a fraction of that wealth themselves. This system left many actors financially unstable. Without financial literacy, investment opportunities, or the ability to make independent financial decisions, many stars spent their fortunes quickly, only to realize, too late, that they had nothing left when their careers declined. Here are some of the most heartbreaking stories of Hollywood legends who lost it all. Judy Garland, she was America's sweetheart. The girl with the golden voice who took us over the rainbow in The Wizard of Oz. But behind the scenes, Judy Garland was trapped in a cycle of exploitation, addiction, and financial ruin. Garland was signed to MGM Studios when she was just 13 years old. From then on, her life was tightly controlled by the studio. She was given prescription drugs to keep her awake during filming and sleeping pills to help her rest. She was constantly pressured to maintain an unrealistic body image, leading to eating disorders and further substance abuse. Despite starring in some of Hollywood's biggest hits, including Meet Me in St. Louis, A Star is Born, and Easter Parade, she saw very little of the fortune she earned. MGM dictated her salary, and much of it was mismanaged by her third husband, Sidney Luft. By the 1960s, Garland was drowning in debt. Her addiction struggles and erratic behavior made it difficult to find consistent work. She resorted to performing in small nightclubs to pay her bills. By the time of her death in 1969, she had just $40 in her bank account. A cruel fate for a woman who had once been one of the highest-paid stars in the world. Bela Lugosi terrified audiences as the original Dracula in 1931, cementing his place in horror film history. But what most don't know is that he spent his final years in poverty and addiction. Lugosi was born in Hungary and came to Hollywood hoping to build a career in film. Dracula made him an icon, but it also typecast him. Unlike his horror movie counterpart, Lugosi never enjoyed an immortal career. Studios only wanted him for vampire roles, and he struggled to find diverse projects. With little work and growing medical problems, Lugosi became dependent on painkillers and morphine. By the 1950s, he was accepting roles in low-budget horror films just to survive. He even took on projects from the infamous director Ed Wood, including Plan 9 from Outer Space, widely considered one of the worst movies ever made. Lugosi died nearly penniless in 1956. His family and friends had to rely on donations from fans to afford his funeral. He was buried in his Dracula cape, a haunting symbol of a man forever trapped in his most famous role. Billie Holiday, one of the most influential jazz singers of all time, had a life as tragic as her songs. With a voice that could break your heart, Holiday revolutionized jazz music. Songs like Strange Fruit and God Bless the Child made her a legend, but her success did not protect her from a tragic downfall. Holiday's life was marred by racial discrimination, substance abuse, and financial mismanagement. The music industry in the 1930s and 1940s was notoriously exploitative, especially toward black artists. Holiday made very little money despite her immense popularity. She was constantly harassed by authorities and was even arrested on her deathbed for drug possession. By the time of her death in 1959, she had just 70 cents in her bank account. Even though her music continues to inspire artists today, Holiday never received the financial rewards she deserved during her lifetime. Mickey Rooney was once one of the biggest box office draws in Hollywood. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, he starred in films like Boys Town and National Velvet, earning millions of dollars. But despite making an estimated $12 million over his career, he lost nearly everything. He went through 8 marriages, each divorce draining more of his wealth. His financial troubles were worsened by bad investments and exploitation by those around him. In his later years, Rooney revealed that he had been a victim of elder abuse and financial exploitation. By 2014, he was living off a small pension and relying on friends for financial support. He died at the age of 93, nearly broke, despite having been one of the most famous actors of his time. Veronica Lake was a Hollywood beauty known for her signature peekaboo hairstyle and her roles in classic noir films. But her career was short-lived. After struggles with alcoholism and poor financial decisions, she was forced to leave Hollywood. She spent her later years working as a bartender in New York City, barely making ends meet. When she died in 1973, her ashes sat unclaimed for years, because no one could afford to retrieve them. Jean Harlow was one of the most glamorous actresses of the 1930s, but she never had full control over her finances. MGM controlled her earnings, and much of her wealth was mismanaged by her mother and stepfather. Harlow died young, at just 26 years old, from kidney failure. Even at the peak of her fame, she was not as financially secure as many assumed. Peter Lorre was famous for his eerie performances in M, 1931, and Casablanca, 1942. But despite his success, he struggled financially due to bad business deals and typecasting. Lorre was often given small roles compared to his talent, and by the 1950s, he was in deep debt. His health deteriorated, and he passed away in 1964 with barely any money left. Dorothy Dandridge was the first black woman nominated for an Academy Award for Carmen Jones, 1954. She should have become a major Hollywood star, but racism in the industry limited her opportunities. She was underpaid compared to white actresses and faced financial difficulties throughout her career. By the 1960s, she was struggling to survive, and when she passed away in 1965, she had just $2 in her bank account. John Barrymore, grandfather of Drew Barrymore, was one of the finest actors of his time, but his love for alcohol led to financial ruin. Despite starring in dozens of films, Barrymore's excessive drinking and reckless spending left him broke in his final years. He was forced to take any role he could find just to afford basic needs. He died in 1942, penniless and largely forgotten, despite being part of Hollywood royalty. Hank Williams was a pioneer of country music, with songs like Your Cheatin' Heart and I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry defining the genre. His talent was undeniable, but so were his personal demons. Williams suffered from alcoholism and drug addiction, which derailed his career. Despite being one of the most successful musicians of his time, he mismanaged his earnings, leaving him with almost nothing in his final days. At just 29 years old, Williams was found dead in the backseat of a car in 1953. His once thriving career had collapsed, and he died nearly penniless. A tragic ending for a man whose music still resonates today. Lon Chaney Jr., best known for his role in The Wolf Man, was once a major star in horror cinema. But after Universal Studios stopped making monster films, Chaney struggled to find work. He fell into alcoholism and lived his later years in near-total obscurity. His financial situation worsened to the point where he relied on government assistance. By the time of his death in 1973, Chaney was a forgotten relic of Hollywood's past. Man who had once terrified audiences as a werewolf died in financial and emotional isolation. Sam Cooke was a trailblazer in soul music. transitioning from gospel to pop with great success. He was one of the first black artists to own a record label, SAR Records, and publishing company, fighting for creative control and rights, at a time when black artists were routinely exploited. Though Cook earned millions, the circumstances of his death and the aftermath were suspicious. His estate was poorly managed, and his widow controversially remarried his business partner soon after his death. Despite his wealth, his children reportedly saw little of his fortune. Additionally, many of his music rights were not retained by his family. Holiday was a pioneering jazz and blues singer with a distinctive voice and emotive delivery. She reached stardom in the 1930s and 40s, becoming an influential figure in American music. Holiday's life was plagued by racism, addiction, and legal troubles. She struggled with heroin addiction, which led to arrests and incarceration. She was denied a cabaret license in New York, limiting her ability to perform and earn. By the end of her life, she had lost most of her money to addiction, bad relationships, and medical bills. She died in a New York hospital, chained to her bed, under arrest for drug possession. She had less than $1 in the bank when she passed away. Known as the Empress of the Blues, Bessie Smith was the most popular female blues singer of the 1920s and early 1930s. She had a powerful voice and magnetic stage presence. The Great Depression devastated her career. Record sales plummeted, and she lost most of her fortune. Racial barriers further hindered her ability to recover financially. As vaudeville faded and radio took over, she was left with few performing opportunities. Smith died following a car crash in Mississippi. She didn't receive immediate medical attention due to segregation-era hospital policies. At the time of her death, she had little to no money, and her grave remained unmarked for years until Janis Joplin paid for a headstone in 1970. Tiny Tim was a novelty act in the late 1960s who gained unexpected fame with his falsetto, voice, and ukulele. He had brief commercial success and made frequent TV appearances. Despite his popularity, Tiny Tim was considered more of a comic figure and never gained lasting respect or stable income. He often performed at small venues or private parties for little money. He had no significant royalties or savings. Tiny Tim died after suffering a heart attack while performing. He lived modestly and struggled with debt and medical expenses. The golden age of Hollywood had its dark side. Studios controlled actors' lives, forcing them into unfair contracts where they had little say over their careers, financial decisions, or even personal lives. Many were underpaid compared to the profits they generated. Financial advisors and managers often exploited them, taking advantage of their lack of financial knowledge. Unlike today's celebrities who have personal businesses, brand deals, and diversified investments, these classic Hollywood stars had limited opportunities to secure financial stability. Adding to the problem was the lack of royalties. Today, actors receive residual payments for their work in films and TV shows, but back then, studios kept all the profits. Even if a movie became a classic and continued making millions over decades, the actors saw none of it. This left many legends financially vulnerable once their careers declined. Without consistent work, savings, or financial education, they found themselves struggling to survive. There are several key reasons why these Hollywood icons fell into financial ruin. Exploitative studio contracts. During the studio era, actors signed long-term contracts that gave studios complete control over their salaries, roles, and public image. Many were underpaid while studios made millions. Financial mismanagement. Many stars had no financial knowledge and trusted managers or agents to handle their money. Unfortunately, some of these people were corrupt, stealing or mismanaging funds. No royalties or residuals. Unlike today's actors, who earn royalties from reruns and streaming services, Golden Age stars did not own their work. Even if their films continued to make millions, they received nothing. Addiction and legal troubles. Many stars struggled with substance abuse, leading to expensive rehab stays, legal battles, and medical bills that drained their wealth. High spending and lavish lifestyles. Some actors spent lavishly during their peak years, buying mansions, cars, and designer clothing, believing their careers would last forever. When work dried up, they had nothing left. Scandals and blacklisting. Some stars were blacklisted due to scandals, political affiliations, or personal conflicts with studios, making it impossible for them to work in Hollywood again. Hollywood has changed a lot since the Golden Age. Today's actors have more control over their careers, finances, and public image, but some of the same dangers still exist. Actors now have more financial freedom. They can negotiate salaries, earn royalties, and invest in businesses. While some stars still fall victim to bad managers, modern legal protections make it harder for people to steal their money. Unlike the past, actors today can make money from sponsorships, social media, endorsements, and personal brands. The entertainment industry is more open about therapy, rehab, and mental health awareness than it was during Hollywood's Golden Age. The Golden Age of Hollywood wasn't as glamorous as it seemed. Many actors worked tirelessly, only to be discarded when they were no longer useful to the studios. Without financial protections, many died in poverty, despite once being famous worldwide. Thankfully, the entertainment industry has evolved, but even today, some celebrities still fall into the same traps, whether it's mismanaged finances, addiction, or extravagant spending. The lesson: even fame and fortune can be temporary, and without the right protections, even Hollywood's brightest stars can lose everything.